All right, welcome back to Podcast Recovery. We are your hosts, David O.
And Eric V.
All right, don't you know? We are joined by our very special Canadian guest today. We got Steven. How you doing?
I'm doing exceptionally well, thank you.
Fantastic. Where are you from?
I live in Drayton Valley, Alberta, in Canada, the Great White North, land of the free.
All right, man. How's the polar winter treating you?
Well, I mean, what you guys call a polar vortex is just a typical Sunday afternoon up here. So, but we're plus temperatures again. It was plus 18 today. So
we're plus temperatures again.
We're in plus temperatures again. Do you guys go by Fahrenheit or centigrade or Celsius?
It's all Celsius.
It's all Celsius.
All Celsius up here. Yeah.
You fucking weirdos. When were you first introduced to recovery?
The very first 12-step based recovery meeting that I went to, I was 7 years old. So my father was in and out of recovery. Oh, yeah, you betcha. And then went and did it all for myself. And then 2010 is when I've been attempting to make changes in my life. So,
all right. And how long have you been clean?
Just over 3 years.
All right. Congratulations on that.
Years.
And without further ado, pitter patter, let's get her done. Let's turn it over to you, Steven.
Fucking A right, Spud. Okay, my journey with addiction began long before I ever picked up drugs for the first time. Mm-hmm. My mom tells me stories when I was a kid. She would offer me one cookie now or two cookies later, and my answer was always, "Where's my fucking cookie, lady?" The addictive kind of mindset has been there since the beginning of my life. Mm-hmm. Now, what made it turn into the severity that it did, I endured and survived a bunch of child abuse for 4 years. So my dad was in active addiction when I was born. He relapsed right after I was born. So he wasn't around. And my mom, single mom, I got an older sister, so it was me and the two ladies. And my mom was still trying to find her place in her own life in the world and what she was doing. So we moved around a whole bunch, at least once a year we moved to a different town, different school. So I never got like any long-term friendships, right? I was always the new kid. I was always left out, which I mean, like it's, I don't know, it's in my nature to feel different, right? I mean, that's common you hear with recovering addicts is that there's something different, right?
Oh yeah.
And not being able to form those long-term friendships in my childhood just further justified that feeling of being different, never fitting in, right?
Oh, yeah.
So when I was 6, we moved in with a guy that my mom had met, and very quickly it turned like real dark. The darkest fucking times of my life was those next 4 years. And like in retrospect, like looking back, that from when I was 6, my dad started to clean up again. Mm-hmm. So like it's interesting. Now I'm super spiritual and really connected with my God now. Mm-hmm. And like looking back, it was like, okay, the timing of so many things are like, holy shit, you've been there the whole time.
Yeah.
Right? It's super cool to look at, right? So my dad started to clean up, and coming back like on weekends, he'd come and get me and we'd go hang out and do the father-son thing. And he started taking me to the meetings that he went to. So I don't know if you guys have been to or go to any kind of fellowship meeting. Yeah. But I was always that bratty little kid setting chairs up, making a lot of noise, right? Like that was my
Oh, you were that
my
fucking
youth,
kid?
The good times of my youth. Oh, I know, right?
Like, don't get me wrong.
I know, and I go now and I'm like, give that kid a tablet or something. Like, holy shit.
Yeah. Like we love those kids, but we also, it's a love-hate relationship.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. So it was really interesting because I actually paid attention, right? Mm-hmm. Which was weird for being a 7-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. But keep in mind, at 7 years old, I was 1 year into, how do I phrase that? I was 1 year into the darkest forms of child abuse that you could ever imagine. Oh. So these meetings were like, I felt there was like love. Yeah, I didn't know what it was at the time, but there was like people caring for people, and that drew my attention, right? Because it was so different than what my everyday was. Yeah. And I heard things about like meditation and prayer and being in the moment, which would proved to be super beneficial later on in my own story, right?
Yeah.
So introduced to 12-step fellowship type of stuff when I was 7. And this abuse at home continued for like I said, for 4 years till I was about 10. And like my mom, she had no idea, right? She was working 2 jobs, always gone. My sister's quite a bit older. She was never around. And my mom came home early from work one day, and this guy had me by my throat up against the wall, and like within a day we were gone, right? So as soon as she kind of understood what was going on, we were out of there in a heartbeat. So
Yeah.
She did the best she could with what she knew and where she was at.
Yeah.
So now, being alone for most of my childhood, right? Like my mom was gone working jobs. My sister was never there. There was a lot of Steve time, right? Like I kept myself company for a long time, and that was my normal. Now I've got 4 small kids of my own, and I finally figured out where they keep coming from, so that's taken care of now. But
so that's what you Canadians do in the snow.
Well, we got to keep warm somehow, right?
I hear you.
So, she kept taking it serious. I was just poking it at her in fun. So it's really cool because whatever a child is exposed to in the first few years of their life, that's what becomes normal, right? So like I've shared this story with a lot of people, and I get usually the same reaction when they hear about what my childhood was like, right? It's always like wide-eyed and like, oh my God. It's like, that's what my normal was. I didn't think it was out of the norm for that kind of shit to happen, right?
Yeah.
However, it did, because I didn't know how to process what was going on internally, and I didn't have anybody or the know-how to express that to anybody else. It started showing up in some really interesting ways. So I would get in fights all the time. I just acting out in school, oh man, it was terrible. Suspended every couple of days. It was pretty bad. And that's how it showed up, right? I didn't know what was going on inside, going through all that abuse. And that gave me a little bit of a reprieve from it, right? This acting up, being the center of attention, causing pain on other people, which and now I got to say too, this guy that caused this abuse, now in my recovery and through the healing that I've done around that, there's a lot of forgiveness around that. Do you know what I mean? Because the way that I was harmed and hurt and putting that onto other people, right? That's the exact same shit that was going on with him. Do you know what I mean? So that's the interesting thing for myself with forgiveness. I'll never forget it, don't get me wrong, but if I can't forgive it, then I'm not going to ever go anywhere, right? It'd be like holding on to a hot ember and expecting to throw it at him.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of forgiveness around that now, and it's taken at least a couple decades of trying to heal from it, right? So that kickstarted a whole bunch of bullshit. And then from the age of 10 to 12, we moved. This is in Sherwood Park in Alberta here. We moved into Edmonton, the capital city, big city. By Alberta standards, it's a big city.
Yeah.
And I think LA's got more people than our whole province does. Anyways, so to you guys, small town, to me, it's big city, right? And my dad was clean now for a few years, and my mom, she couldn't handle the anger and the acting out and my shitty attitude.
Yeah.
So I ended up moving in with my dad, and he relapsed within a week of me moving in with him. And now this is interesting too. So my dad was clean up until I was born, and then relapsed right after. And then I got sent to live with him, and he relapsed right after, right? So this built a story in my head around I am the reason why he keeps using, right? I'm the cause of his pain and why he's not around. That's my fault, right? And this is now where my story with addiction is a little bit different than most that I've heard. I was 12 years old. My old man relapse was using in front of me, and then he fucked off. So the very, very first drug I ever tried wasn't your typical smoking reefer with your buddies and having a beer, right? It was hard drugs right off the hop. Very first drug was crack cocaine when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
And I remember it like it was yesterday. So I've had 12 years of disgust and self-hatred and pain that I didn't know what to do with. Like it was like a hurricane in my mind and in my soul.
Yeah.
That like it was treacherous. And then I tried that drug and it disappeared, right? It was like a warm hug. I could think straight. Like it was the answer to my problems. You know, and it didn't develop into that, right? Like it was, and then I was everyday crack user for the next bunch of years, starting at age 12, right? I disappeared. I detached from my family. I had it in my mind that none of them really cared anyways.
Yeah.
But that was that was me trying to deal with my own shit, right? Like I've got wicked relationships with all of my family now. You know, and I share my youth, my childhood with them, and they're like, whoa, that's not what happened. You know, and then I got to talk to them about like perspective, right? And it's like, well, you know, from over there looking at it, this is what you saw. From over here looking at it, this is what I saw, right? Which is really interesting. I mean, the past is just our memories strung together as best we can, and where there's holes, we fill them in, right? So, like the memory is like the least reliable thing on the planet. So perspective is really interesting. How none of my family, and I had it in my head that none of them gave a shit. So I just took off, and I was living on the streets, doing whatever I could just to.
How old were you at this time?
This was from 12 to 15.
So you were a young teenager living on the streets?
Oh, dude, it's crazy, man. Like my oldest son in 2 years, that's how old he's going to be, is 12. And like I look at him and it's like, there's no fucking way, right? Like I got little cousins that are around that age, right? And it's like, are you kidding me? And then even the ones that are older, they're like 17, 18 in their last year of university. It's like, man, by 18, I was already in 2 gangs and spent 3 years in jail. Like,
Jesus,
that's fucked, man. Like so crazy. Yeah, it was wild. So yeah, from 12 to 15, I was living on the streets, and I got mixed up with a group of guys. You know, and again, looking back, it was really interesting because like there was no connection, no long-term friendships going through school, and then the abuse sent me into isolation, and then the dope just furthered that isolation, right? I mean, drugs don't want you to be free and connected, right? They want you to be by yourself and hating yourself, and then it keeps going, right? So I met a group of guys that showed me connection, right? They were like, do this, and we'll be your family, right? And it was not a good group of dudes to get involved with. And that way. I mean, I'm not gonna get into like horror. If you want to hear horror stories, there's tons of places on the internet for them. But but this ain't one of them. Anyways, so lots of gang involvement, and then I ended up getting arrested when I was 15 with a whole slew of charges, and spent 3 years in the Young Offender Center. And the first year and a half, just over a year and a half of that, I was still so filled with anger and hatred towards everybody around me. And then because the dope use every day is what kept me alive, right? Like if it wasn't for drug use in the beginning, I'm pretty damn sure I would have killed myself or tried to at least a long time before the first time that I actually tried, right? Because it removed that pain that was there, right? I mean, unbeknownst to me, it would cause issues way greater later on, but it was like drug, and I say this all the time, like drug use is not my problem, right? My problem is knowing how to live. Right? Child abuse, childhood trauma, that's my problem. Drugs was the answer in the beginning, and then it got way fucking worse, and then I found new answers later on, right? So now you take an everyday dope user that's trying to hide from childhood traumas, and you take his drugs away and throw him in a box with a bunch of other guys. Like, man, I acted out way fucking worse in the first year and a half. I spent a year and a half on a unit called Zama. Zama's like the whole, I guess, for Young Offender Center is 23 and a half hours by myself in a box for just about a year and a half. And then earlier, I was talking about hearing about meditation and prayer in those NA meetings. This now came to the front of my mind like effortlessly. So my first experiences with prayer and meditation, not knowing what the hell I was doing, right? Because
Yeah.
I was still just a kid, and heard like ideas of this, like sit with yourself, focus on your breath, picture this, picture that. You know, and I was able to get into some real deep meditative states, which started to change a whole lot of things. You know, it was the first time that I started to build a connection with some kind of higher power. I didn't realize it at the time. I was just trying to pass time, right? Because 23 and a half hours with just your own brain is fucking terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I got introduced to prayer and meditation when I was in jail. I got released from there in 2008. And, like, this is the interesting part. Now, my attempts at recovery start in 2010. And like I tried a whole bunch of different ways, right? And one of the ways was just abstinence, stop using and things will get better,
Yeah.
right? And if I had the wherewithal to look back just a few years, I had 3 years of fucking abstinence. I had plans on what I was going to do. Things were going to be different. I got released in 2008. Less than 3 days later, I was right back where I was before.
Yeah.
You know, so that to me now, that's like cold hard evidence that abstinence isn't the fucking answer. Like nothing comes from stopping drug use. There's got to be something more to it than that.
Yeah.
You know, and when I got released, I started running. I ended up going back on the dope like just a few days after being released, and then I started running. I didn't know what I was running from, but I started moving around quite a bit. Like I moved out to Vancouver Island in BC, and then all the way back to, into Saskatchewan. You want to talk about a barren landscape, man? Holy cow. I moved into our neighbors to the east, Saskatchewan, for a little while. And the interesting part, so like I moved to Vancouver Island, lived in a town called Duncan, and things were great for like a week and a half. Right? It was like I got a job lined up. I got like I found a place to stay. Things were going really fucking awesome. Now, the shitty part about running from yourself is you tend to end up wherever it is that you run to.
You can never get away.
And I didn't realize, right? It was always your fault, your fault, your fault. You did this. It's these people. It's this place. If I can get out of this place, things will be great. You know, and like I said, they were for a little while. And then, you know, I found the people that I found initially. It was just a different city, right? So like running from myself didn't fucking work.
Yeah.
You know, and then I ended up in, like I said, in Saskatchewan for a little while. Same thing, man. I got to Saskatoon, and for about 2 or 3 weeks, things were going really fucking good.
Is that
right?
the
Like,
only city in Saskatchewan?
There's one that kind of sounds like vagina. There's a whole bunch of like little towns. And that's the whole reason I didn't move to Regina, because like you can't say Regina without laughing hysterically on the inside. And there was no way that if somebody was like, "Hey, where are you from?" It's like, "Oh, I'm from Regina, Saskatchewan." Like, no, I'm good. Yeah. So there's as far as cities go, like I mean, I don't think Canada has any cities in comparison, but
No,
I mean, you got Toronto. Toronto's a nice city. I've been. Oh, did you just spit at Toronto? Oh no! For all our listeners in Toronto, we love you.
And to be fair, I looked up.
To be fair,
I looked up Edmonton, and it has the same population size as where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, does it really? Oh, nice.
Yeah, we're in Baltimore.
Yeah.
So same population size.
And Toronto. We love Toronto over there. I guess.
No, dude,
I mean, this is Alberta, right? We're east of the Rockies and west of the rest, man. Best place on earth.
I hear you. I mean, we're Americans, so we have tons of fucking cities we hate, but we're not going to get into
Yeah,
that.
right?
Oh, there's so much.
I'm just one thing I'm super happy is that you guys haven't asked if I live in an igloo yet. That makes me so.
You're not that far north.
No.
Right? You know?
Oh man, I've talked to some Americans and there's like, yeah, I ride my reindeer to school uphill both ways from my igloo. Like, oh, it's crazy. It's like, yeah, we have cars. I got running water and a furnace.
Well, yeah.
You guys don't like drink maple syrup religiously? I thought you did.
Well, that's that we're not allowed to talk about that.
All right, we've digressed. Back to the story.
That's like, yeah. Okay, maple syrup. Did you know that maple syrup is our number one exported product out of everything?
No fucking way.
I thank you for it because I love natural maple syrup.
You're so welcome.
This shit we fucking call syrup down here in America is awful. It's corn syrup. It's high fructose corn syrup. That's like, oh, it's maple flavored, and it's like, it's bullshit. Get the shit from the tree.
Well, even
get it from
even
Canada,
then, man. Maple flavoring, that's not even a thing.
No.
No, it's crazy. And I mean, I don't know the exact number and I don't want to just make something up, but it's like Canada produces something like 14 or 15% of all of the maple syrup on the whole planet.
Uh-huh.
That number could be higher. I was being restrictive a little bit. But,
God bless you, Canucks.
Oh, man. Maple syrup and hockey. What can I say?
Fucking A. All right, back.
Yeah, so
you moved to Saskatoon.
Holy rabbit holes, hey? That was fun.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was living in Saskatoon in Saskatchewan, and same thing happened. Like things were going really, really well for a very short time.
Mm-hmm.
And then my whirlwind of shit that I had caused behind me caught up with me and hit me with a vengeance. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved from there. Back to Alberta, I reached out to some family. I moved in with my grandparents. They lived in Sylvan Lake. Sylvan Lake in Alberta, it's like the party hub of the whole province.
Yeah. You guys have a lake. What else do you need?
I know, right? Like, we got lots of lakes, but I don't know what it is about that. It's not a very nice town. And it's just a party town, right? It's party central for the whole province.
Mm-hmm.
And why I chose to move to the party city to quit partying was like,
that's poetic justice.
It was beyond me. Oh man, there was some reservations in there like crazy. So in 2009 I moved to Sylvan Lake and I was living with my grandparents. And again, first few weeks things were going really well. I caught up with myself. I was able to hide it a little bit better this time for some reason. I think probably because I had somebody to hide it from. Whereas when I was in a city that didn't have any family or anything, I didn't give a shit, right? Like I would just run rampant. But living with my grandparents, now I had somebody that I had to hide it from. And I did pretty good at it. Just kind of like slowly dying by myself, right? It was in Sylvan Lake that I met the who would turn out to be the mother of my two oldest kids. Mm-hmm. That was like the first romantic relationship that I ever got into. Mm-hmm. Man, like the whole sex thing has been really interesting for my whole life because of the shit I went through in my childhood, right? Like it was never fun. It was never enjoyable. Oh. It just like brought up until I healed a bit from that kind of shit. Like and took ownership over what was going on internally and allowed myself to gain enjoyment from physical contact. It was never fun. It brought back all these memories and images and all this shit. So trying to build a romantic relationship, like not even knowing how to be in a relationship with myself, was very difficult. But somehow, I mean, like I'm an addict, right? So I'm real good at convincing people of whatever the fuck I want them to believe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it worked. We were together for probably about a year and a half before my oldest son was born. And this was in 2010. Now, 2010 was a very interesting year. My dad at this point had cleaned up again, and we were starting to build a relationship. And then in 2010, in February, my grandfather passed away, the grandfather that I was living with. So the tough part with that, if I look back throughout my entire life, one of the only positive male influences that I ever had was my grandfather. No matter what I was doing or where I was at, like he never looked at me any differently, he never talked to me any differently. He was just always fucking there until he wasn't. And that was February of 2010. He passed away. And then, that kind of opened when a death like that happens to somebody that's close to you. It, for myself anyways, it made me like relook at the relationships that I had.
Yeah.
I mean, I was still doing dope every day, so I wasn't looking that hard, but it opened that door, right?
Yeah.
And like I was talking to my father again. I was trying to build that back up while still maintaining time to cause more wreckage on the side, just a part-time gig now. Which again doesn't fucking work.
No.
But then in July of 2010, he passed away. So now, like, it really sucks because, like, I mean, I love my dad to pieces. I miss him every day. But it was like in my childhood, his active addiction kept him away.
Yeah.
And then he cleaned up, and my active addiction kept me away, combined with a bunch of resentments and like, why didn't you protect me when you were supposed to, and all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
Again, placing blame on other people. Yeah, and then we started to build a relationship in the end, and then he fucking died. So I feel like I missed out on that opportunity.
Yeah.
Which, like, it's unfortunate. It really sucks. Some days it really fucking sucks. However, what I take from that now is more motivation to make sure that my kids don't ever have to feel what that feels like, right? So there's a lot more motivation for that. Yeah, which is really cool. And then in December of 2010, my first son was born. So it was like, you take a kid who doesn't learn what feelings are or how to express his shit, throw him through some abuse, and then drag him through the gutters, and then give him that fucking year, right? It was like, you want to talk about a roller coaster of fucking emotions, man? I was a wreck.
Yeah.
And then my son was born, and like, I hear this lots as well with a lot of other people in recovery or trying to get into recovery, right? I'll do it for my kids. And so I tried that too, right? It's like, I'll do this for him, right? I'm not going to let him grow up with a dope fiend dad, right? That really sucks. I know what it's like, and it's not fucking happening to this kid. Less than 6 months later, I relapsed. Right. And like, so from 2010 until present, all of the relapses that I've had, when I was actually like having a desire for something different.
Yeah.
They were all very short, but super powerful, except for one, but I'll get into that in a bit here. But they were all like 1 day or 2 days, go and buy a whole whack ton that would kill a regular person and see if I can just do it all. Right. And then it was like, it's interesting. So, those moments of bliss that come from drug use, and like, always, right? Like, that's the whole reason I used, was to have that bliss. It's interesting. Like, I'm really stressed out. Shit's going really fucking bad. I feel like I can't sit in my own skin. And then I would use the dope, and then that bliss would come on. All of these problems would be hushed up. And then instantly after, I'd be like, I'm never doing that again. Holy fuck, I can't believe I relapsed. Why are you using dope? And then that bliss would fade away, and then all the pain would start to come back. Right. And it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. What are you going to do with it now?
That's why you did that.
Yeah.
You need that bliss. It's interesting. And like, I like the term. I don't know if you guys have heard or read anything by Dr. Gabor Mate. He's a Canadian doctor that does a lot with addictions. And he uses this little piece of imagery that I really like. He's got a book, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. And he explains it like, people that struggle with addiction have these hungry ghosts inside that have enormous stomachs and tiny mouths, right? So this insatiable hunger for something, but not the capacity to ever satisfy it, right?
Oh, wow.
And that's like, and this guy has never struggled with addiction. He's worked with addicts in recovery as well as in active addiction, Maine and Hastings, downtown Vancouver.
And what was the name of that book again?
In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts.
Oh, wow. That's powerful.
Dr. Gabor Mate. He's done a lot up here anyways for changing the way that addiction is looked at. Because it's not a moral dilemma. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
It's a spiritual disease, right? It's a spiritual malady, not a moral deficiency. Yeah. And it wasn't until recently that these things are starting to be looked at differently up here, which is really cool. And a lot of that is because of him. Anyways, that was the only time I've ever heard addiction summarized so beautifully. Yeah. Right? Like, that's like, that you want to, like, that hits the nail right on the head. I love it. Yeah. Yeah, and every one of my relapses, these these ghosts would come back, right? And then the thought would be there, like, just persisting pounding in my head, go get loaded, go get loaded, go get loaded.
Yeah.
And what I did in the beginning, 2010 to probably 2011, 12, was work, right? I'd go work for like 20 hours a day. Like all the fucking time. I would go to work for 14 hours and then like working out of town, right? And then continue to do work when I was off work. And like, that's it. I would distract myself with work.
Yeah.
Again, never looking at any of like the root issues or bigger problems that were causing all of this on the outside. You know, it was always looking for an external solution to an internal fucking situation, right?
Oh yeah.
You know, so I would dive into work. And this is like this. So in the beginning, I mentioned how my addiction has almost nothing to do with drugs. In one of these periods of abstinence, I don't call them chunks of recovery because there was no recovery. I just wasn't using dope.
Yep.
But in one of these periods of abstinence, I saw a YouTube video of those Nitro RC cars.
Yeah.
Right? Sick as shit. In like 2 weeks, I had 12 of them.
Jesus.
You want to talk about addictive behaviors? Like, holy fuck, man. Like, sure, you're not smoking crack in the bathroom, but you're spending rent money on fucking remote control cars. Do you know what I mean?
But they're rad fucking remote control cars.
Oh, buddy. And when you mix this brand of fuel with that brand of fuel and you can crank the governor up, oh, man, they fly. They're super fun. Let me strike up Amazon here quick. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, like these addictive patterns would show up in other ways, right? Because again, I was blaming my problems on drug use. If I can just stop using dope, then everything will be okay. You know, and it wasn't until later in my life that I realized like, well, no. Like, first of all, it's okay to not be okay, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the first thing that I had to learn, was that it's okay to be fucked up sometimes, right? It's okay to feel like shit. And then I have to figure out where that shit is coming from, right? Not just cover up the symptom, right? I got to figure out what the issue is. What's the cause behind it? So lots of periods of abstinence. And it was like looking at these chunks of abstinence starting in 2010, any time that life threw me anything out of the realm of what I made normal. So what I mean by that is like, you know, I had work and I worked from this hour to this hour. And then when I came home, dinner was at this time. And if everything just fit in their fucking spot in this little box, then everything was great. And I was able to maintain abstinence and pretend like everything was okay. And then anytime that there was a major fluctuation in emotion, either negative or positive, it threw me into a relapse. So stuff like that is like my son was born, and then 6 or 7 months later, we got kicked out of the place that we were living. So that was a major negative upset, and I relapsed right after that. And then July, the 19th of July is the date my father passed away. And until I allowed myself to go through the grieving process or to start it, I believe it's a lifelong process. But once I started that grieving process, it wasn't until I started grieving that I was able to pass a July 19th on the calendar without getting loaded. So anytime like super negative shit would happen, and then even positive things. So I don't know what it is about being a guy, but like, I always wanted a daughter. I wanted a little girl, right? And so we got pregnant a second time, and that one turned out to be a miscarriage. So there was another big negative upset and relapse shortly after. And then just a few months after that, we were able to get pregnant again. And this one went full term. However, here's the interesting thing. Now, I'm a dude. I wanted a little girl, right? I wanted somebody to protect. And just like she's, I paint her nails. I'll do her hair up. It's super fun, right? I love that shit.
Yeah.
And so 3 ultrasounds throughout the pregnancy, 3 different doctors in 3 different towns, all told us that it was going to be a boy. And I was like, okay, I'm probably only going to have 2 kids. It's 2 boys. That's all right. I was starting to accept this. Like, okay, it's fine. The last ultrasound we had, the 3rd one, was like less than 2 weeks before this kid was born. And so we're there. We do the whole delivery process, which, is like the most disgusting and beautiful moment of my entire life. And then my daughter was born.
Wow.
Right? So I was told it was going to be a boy throughout the whole pregnancy, had my head wrapped around that. We had the nursery room all set up for a boy, while inside I desperately wanted a daughter. And then I had a daughter, right? So I was overwhelmed with joy. And less than 3 days later, I relapsed, right? Because I didn't know how to process these large fluctuations of emotion, right? I didn't know how to handle negative shit. That I already kind of knew. But this was new to me, right? Where it's like, at that moment, I was happier than I had ever been in my entire life. Right. And that was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right. So when I got uncomfortable, I would go to numb that, right? I would numb that out with using dope.
Quick question.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
When your daughter came out, were you like, where does penis go?
Yeah. Well, because I was
immediately like,
holding.
Go ahead.
I was holding, like, I was up by her mom's head and holding her hand and like doing all like the husbandy type of shit or whatever.
Yeah.
So I didn't see the doctor, like, oh man, I don't know the terms to fucking use for this stuff, but the doctor caught the baby or whatever and then held her up and was like, here you go, a beautiful, healthy girl. And like, my fucking heart fell through my asshole like quicker than you fucking, oh man. Like right now I'm like wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and then the tears start coming. I was so stoked. And it was so surreal and like I didn't believe it. And now it's funny, like I got friends that are pregnant now and they've got ultrasounds that are like, oh, it's a boy. And I'm like, oh yeah. Don't paint the fucking walls yet. Just you wait.
Yeah.
So that was super interesting experience. So, and again, I was not in recovery. I was just in not doing drugs.
Yeah.
Right. That was the goal. Don't do drugs because you have kids now. Right. And then, excuse me. So right after my daughter was born, she was born in 2000 and.
You all right over there? Yeah.
2015 she was born. Hello?
Yep.
Hello?
Yep, you're there.
Okay, there we go. She was born in 2015, and then shortly after that, me and their mother split up. And like, I mean, there was a lot of pain through that I had to work through or whatever, but I was gone working all the time. She wasn't getting what she needed. Like, it's, I get it. However, now I feel like I failed my kids. So that threw me into a big relapse. There was suicide attempts, living in my car. I was doing drugs that I had never done before. Like, it was bad. I was trying to kill myself, and I succeeded. January 11th of 2016, just a few days before my clean date, I got a batch of bad dope and my heart stopped. I was in the hospital in Red Deer. My heart stopped. I hadn't eaten for weeks. Malnourished. I weighed 98 pounds. My stomach had started to eat itself and my kidneys were shutting down. And it was, I had an out of body experience, right? I saw myself laying on the table, my auntie that was in the room. And it was like, I'm so connected to my higher power now. And a big part of that, the reason for that is because I got to have a conversation with him, right? It was like I was given the choice. And like, he was stern, man. Like, holy shit. He's like, okay, this is it. Last fucking chance, or you can just be done. And like I chose one more chance. I mean, obviously, right? I'm sitting here right now. So
yeah.
And then the feeling you get when you're falling, like your stomach jumps to your throat.
Oh, fuck.
All the butterflies and stuff.
Yeah.
It was like that times 100, combined with all of the pain that I had ever experienced or caused to anybody in my whole life, came back all at once.
Fuck.
And then I hit my body and like woke right up. And my heart went from operating at like 14 or 15% up to almost 90% overnight. My kidneys were back to 100%. My stomach was healed like instantly. you know, and I walked from the hospital in Red Deer to the detox center, and I was in the detox center for a couple of weeks, and then put in an application for a treatment center. And it was a really cool treatment center. It's a wilderness-based experiential learning treatment center, so out in the Rockies. And so experiential learning, they take things that I know about, tying knots, hiking, rock climbing, that kind of shit, and they apply it to things I don't know about, learning something new, building trust with other people, communication, you know, and it was really successful in just allowing me to learn new ways to live.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like, you know, the Johan Hari, he does public speaking and tries to change. Like, you have you guys seen that Rat Park experiment, or the everything you thought you knew about addiction was wrong?
No.
Well, my favorite quote from him is, the opposite of addiction is not recovery. The opposite of addiction is connection. Connection with other people, right? Like, and that's why I believe those fellowships do so fucking well, is because we have community, right? We have connection with other people.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Like, I believe for a long time that it was the substances that were addictive, right? Like heroin, most addictive thing on the planet, right? The Vietnam War, all the soldiers went over to Vietnam and were doing heroin every day, right? Now, if heroin was so addictive, when they came back, they'd be hopeless heroin addicts living on the streets, banging rigs, right? However, more than 90% of them stopped using when they came back because they were surrounded by their family. They had purpose, loved ones, human connection, right? It's interesting. Yeah, and then so from there, of 2016 until present day, this is the only time that I've had recovery in my life, right? This is the only time that I've been going deeper and looking to make those changes in order to get where I'm going, right? I learn from where I've been so that I can build on it in today and then get to wherever it is that I'm going.
Yeah.
You know, and it's been like it's up and down, right? I mean, there's good days, there's bad days, and you know, I'm engaged now, and we have another little baby, and she had a son when I met her, so that's four kids that are running around here causing a ruckus. You know, I have my fucking days, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah.
However, my worst day in recovery is 1,000,000 times better than my best day on the streets using dope.
Yeah.
You know,
fucking A.
all the stress and pain of real life is fucking nothing in comparison to that black fucking void that I was able to climb out of thanks to the support of my higher power. You know, and now, like, there's lots of things that are paying off now, right? Like that treatment center, they've hired me to go back and work there.
Wow.
You know, I've got a whole bunch of other products. My whole life is dedicated to helping people that have walked or are going to walk some of the same paths that I have, right? Like the shit that I've been through, if I can use it to help one person, then it has a purpose for happening, right? Like I'll heal from it, I'll grow from it. Whatever, that's all hunky-dory. But if I can help one fucking kid who's struggling to not be struggling so much anymore, right, then there's purpose behind it. So,
All right.
It's awesome.
Fantastic, man. What a fucking killer story, man. You did fantastic.
thanks, dude.
I let Eric lead off last episode, so I'm going to lead with this one.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Snarky asshole. All right.
Yeah, pip cheerio.
That's exact. If Eric was British, it wouldn't surprise me. Like, he could be a British guy, and it would be not, like, a far stretch of the imagination. Anyway.
Oh, that's so funny.
Your story, like, dude, you really, like, spoke so much to me because, like, I grew up in, like, I had an abusive father as well. And I had to deal with a lot of that trauma and growing up. So I'm like, one of the quotes you said was like, there was a hurricane in your soul. And dude, like when you said that, it gave me fucking goosebumps because it's so fucking true for me as well. And I had like just had so much fucking anger and resentment and just hatred, just like focused at everywhere but me. So were there any, like my first like outlets for that, like along with like addictive tendencies was like music, and like I got into like heavy music. I was listening like at a young age, listening to like Korn and Slipknot and shit. So like, were there any other like healthy outlets you ever had for that anger and for that like aggression?
So like kind of reprieves in the moment. My mom, I'm super grateful for this. My mom saw these negative tendencies and put me into soccer as well as boxing. So I got to play soccer and do boxing, which was like, holy fuck, I've got all this pent up rage. You're going to put gloves on my hands and let me pummel this guy? Like, yeah, sign me up. I never really did get into music per se. Yeah, not a whole, apart from playing soccer and the little bit of boxing that I did during that time. Those would be, I guess, the two that come to mind anyway.
Okay. All right.
Heck yeah.
What you got, Eric?
So you kind of touched on this, and about how addiction has manifested itself in other areas of your life.
I know he answered so many of my questions while he was speaking.
But what I'm going to ask is, since you've been in recovery, what has been the largest manifestation of your addiction since being in recovery?
That's a good one. And especially with more recently, the way that addiction manifests itself in my life today is with buying shit. I'm so bad with like I get on the Amazon machine and like I just found out they're building an Amazon warehouse less than an hour from here, so now I can have next day with my Prime that I already paid too fucking much for. And it's crazy. Like and I mean, sure, it's less destructive than the shit I was doing. However, acting out on those is not fucking healthy, right? So definitely buying shit. And most of it's just crap too, right?
Yeah, I've gone through multiple cycles of that, and that's why I have an eBay store right now.
Oh man, like I'm looking at all the questions I wrote down, and you answered so many of them. All right, so you talked about like sort of a, not necessarily a lack, but maybe a lack of connection with positive male influences in your life, and how paramount is that for you to now be that positive male influence in your kids' lives?
You know what's interesting is it's not just with my kids. I have a tendency whenever I'm around anybody, right? I'm always like, I try, not always, right? I'm still fucking human, but
yeah,
I try to lead with my best foot forward because I never know who's going to be fucking watching. Do you know what I mean? And with my kids, like it's tough because I want to be that person that they look up to, especially as a supportive, positive male influence. However, I don't want to like slam it in their face. Do you know what I mean? And just be like, no, me, pick me.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I've got to just lead by example from a distance, which is super fucking hard because I'm a very hands-on person. Right. So it's tough, but it is like more so, what's more important to me instead of being that positive male influence is I want to, at the very least, assist them in finding those positive male influences, right? It doesn't have to be me as long as there's some of them, right?
Beautiful. Love it. All right. Okay. And this is something like, I don't have kids yet, but I've thought about it quite a bit, and you do have kids, and I want to talk about sort of...
you want to buy some?
A Canadian kid? Absolutely. What's the exchange rate?
Oh, yeah. I got to let our dollar climb a little bit before I send over borders.
What I've thought about is like breaking the cycle of abuse. Like how have you how have you gone about that? Like what sort of tools do you use to not be like what you experienced?
There's what tools do I use? So when my first two kids were born, that was like right in the front of my mind the whole time, right? I was like, how do I not be like that, right? How do I make sure that that doesn't happen?
Yeah.
You know, and like I'll be honest, there were times where it's like, you know, my son didn't pick his cars up right, because I'm diagnosed OCD too, right? So it's like everything's got to fucking be in the right place, color coordinated, or daddy loses his shit. You know, and I did on a 3-year-old kid because he didn't put the cars with the cars, right? And I had to like pause and just be like, whoa, hold on a sec here. And it's interesting now. I do a lot of work with like manifestation and projecting to the universe and all that kind of hoodoo voodoo shit.
Yeah.
So looking back to those years, about 5 or 6 years ago, because I was so focused on breaking that cycle of abuse, I was in turn then generating some of that, just because that's what I was projecting, right? Like I was like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, and then I would do it. Right? It's like, well, what the fuck? I said don't do it, but the universe doesn't understand between want and don't want, right? All it hears is abusive childhood, and it's like, oh, okay, right? So now what I do is I try to not pay attention to it, right? I listen to my kids. I try to play with them as much as I can. And then when those things come up, because I think it's in my mind, it's human nature a little bit to be a little controlling over your kids and wanting them to just like do the right fucking thing. You know, and it happens still today, right? I'm like, well, why do you keep yelling at your son, right? Or at your brother? And it's interesting because it's like, I'm yelling at the 3-year-old to stop yelling at the baby. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so I'm showing him like, if you want somebody to do something, this is how you do it, right?
Yeah.
And then he yells at the baby, and it's like, well, wait a second. If I'm going to fucking yell at you to stop yelling at it, like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, monkey see, monkey do kind of stuff.
Absolutely. You know, and it's only in the last 3 years or so that I've been able to like be conscious about this kind of stuff. So the main thing for me today is awareness. Not trying to be perfect, but just being aware of the relationship that's building.
Yeah.
You know, and if they're pissed off, let them be pissed off, right? If one of my kids starts screaming and crying, let them fucking do it.
Yeah.
Right? Because I was never allowed to do that when I was young. It was keep your fucking mouth shut, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then I learned that, like, you know, okay, if I'm quiet and I don't express that I'm upset, then I'll be accepted. If I act out on what's going on, then I'm going to be rejected, right? So that's what I try to break chains of, is like, no, man, fuck, you want to cry? Well, I'll cry with you. Let's cry together.
Beautiful. What you got, Eric?
Let's see.
Over to Eric with sports.
Yeah, man. So you said you work at a recovery center, correct? Mm-hmm. So here's something I've always kind of wondered about. So I'm gonna kind of sort of break our rule a little bit. I won't talk about the actual fellowships, but I will kind of bring up, just from a tradition perspective, how do you separate kind of being, working in a recovery center and then being in a recovery fellowship, and like trying to not let those two lines kind of bleed over? Because one's a job while the other one is, something that's active in your life. And there is a clear, defined, distinction between the two, and there's going to be a natural blend that happens, but how do you not let them bleed into each other?
So I'm pretty sure I know what you're asking. The interesting part with the treatment center that I work at is it's the one that I went to.
Yeah.
So there's even a deeper connection to it, right? It's not just, find an ad for a recovery house and then apply there. And right. So I've been involved since day one of my actual recovery with this program through, they've got an alumni program, organize little events to hang out with the guys and have community that way. So that's it's super difficult to have that distinction, because this place and these people have been a big part of my recovery process, right? So the way that I keep it separate now, the role that I fulfill with them right now is alumni ambassador. So I'm the one that organizes these little events for the dudes, and kind of like the way that sponsorship works in those 12-step fellowships, same kind of things. Things are going shitty, give me a call. Things are going great, give me a call. We set intentions, we set goals, and whatever, right? So that's the role that I fulfill there now. So with that role, it's easier because I have my support system outside of that. Yeah. And I don't do like when I'm wearing that hat, I guess, or when I'm fulfilling that role, I don't talk about my shit, right? That's not the place for me to talk about my shit. Yeah. Yes, I gain benefits from it, like just from being of service to another human being. Yeah. There's positive energy that flows in those connections, but that's not the place for me to get into my shit. And it's been super difficult to find that balance, right? Between cause that's my passion work. That's my life's passion, is helping people that lived the way that I did, right? Like that's what I am dedicating my fucking life to. Yeah. So it's like some days I don't want to separate it, right? I just want to be completely enveloped in this fucking growth fucking whatever, right? Completely consumed by this work. However, the necessity for self-care is massive, right? Because if I start absorbing other people's shit and taking it on as my own, then that's just going to cause problems, right? So making sure that my morning routine stays mine and that my recovery stays mine. Like I can share triumphs and shit with the dudes there, but I've got my core network that has nothing to do with that at all. Yeah. So when I got shit that comes up, my supports are elsewhere.
Awesome.
Nice. All right. Okay. Yeah, this is a good question. Especially, I'm gonna get a lot out of this. I know. I have not come to a place where, with my abusive father, forgiveness has not really come to, full fruition. Partially has, in my mind, but, not entirely in my spirit. How did you go, what was your process for forgiving your abusers and really growing from that and not letting that be a toxic force in your life anymore?
All right. That is a really good question. It's been a process, right? And it's been a long fucking process. The biggest part of where I can build forgiveness for abusers comes from making a clear definition that what has happened and it's not happening now, right? Yeah. And then because I did work through the 12 steps as well, and a big part of that is making a list of the people that we had harmed and then clearing that wreckage and stuff, right? And the forgiveness didn't start until I had that list of my own wreckage that I caused. Yeah. Right. And then because in that process I have to forgive myself, right? And I have to be okay, I've done shitty things, but I'm not a shitty person, right? And it's that's kind of when it clicked for me, was man, if I'm going to forgive myself for all this shit, right? If I'm taking an honest moral inventory and I'm looking at all the stuff I did and why I did it, right? Then that must mean that all the stuff that he did, there is also a why he did it behind it that I'm not seeing, right? And don't get me wrong, there's still it's still not fucking easy, right? And and then also also having this super clear definition in my mind that forgiveness is not acceptance, right? Forgiveness is not permission, and forgiveness does not make it okay, right? Yeah. What he did is not fucking okay. But if I want to move forward, I have to find forgiveness around that and understand that he did shitty things, but he's not a shitty person, right?
Wow.
But it's tough. It's fucking, and it's an ongoing process, man. It's not fucking easy.
Yeah. All right.
And then it's one more thing on that too. My spiritual practices follow a Buddhism type of structure, and Buddhism is all encompassing and love everything and everyone. So if I'm going to fulfill this Buddhist path, right? This kind of Buddhism pathway.
Yep.
That's a big part of it. There's a practice that I do. This is one big one. It's a compassion meditation that I do, and I go through the process and I bring into my mind myself, and I show compassion and love for myself, and I say that out loud, and then I pick somebody that I'm neutral to, right? Somebody that like we're not really friends, but we pass occasionally, or I met them a long time ago, or the guy serving coffee at the Timmy's, whatever, right? And I say the same thing. I show love and compassion for that person. And then I choose somebody that I actually like really love and enjoy, and like somebody that's super important in my life. And I do the same thing. And then I pick somebody that I dislike, that bring up feelings of dislike or resentment or anger towards, and I show that compassion to that person as well. And it's that practice, I think, is where a lot of the forgiveness came from, because he was the one I picked every time, right?
Yeah.
And like, by continuing to do that on a semi-regular basis, then it was like, okay, like, sure, he fucked up. So did I, right? I fucked up a whole bunch in my life, right?
Yeah.
With some shit that was just as bad, or maybe a little worse than what he did to me. So if I'm gonna forgive myself, then I gotta forgive everybody too, right?
Beautiful. All right. Can I ask one more question, Eric? Okay. I have to ask permission from the teacher. So have you worked all 12 of the fellowship steps?
I have, yeah.
Okay. What, and you have to pick one.
Yep.
Which step has been your favorite?
Ooh. Oh, man. That's a question. I have to pick one? Just one?
Just one.
The 13th step.
Oh, my man.
I'm totally joking.
That's the best answer so
That's the
far.
best answer. Yeah, that's great.
My favorite step, oh man, there's so many ways that can go. It's like the first one's my favorite because that begins the whole journey. The 12th one is my favorite because that allows me to share this journey. Fuck me. And I've got such an analytical mind, so like making a list is also super enjoyable.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Oh, man.
Fuck me.
How about
Which one's my favorite?
Okay, so how about we rephrase it?
No rephrasing.
Well, I thought of a rephrase, kind
Okay,
of. Okay, so
fine.
instead of thinking of it as your favorite step, which step thus far has, let's just look at it in recovery terms, given you the biggest boost to your recovery, right? Like what?
I like the way I said it better.
Well, yeah, I mean, but like, I don't know. So I guess what, 3 is like the one that gives you like the biggest boost.
3 is for me.
Right. So what step
That's a
after
sweet rhyme.
you worked it, you were like, oh wow, that like, you got the, I don't know, like the biggest eureka moment or whatever.
Most juice.
Yeah.
Like the big aha.
Yeah.
I think it would have to be, I think it's number 11. Continues to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. No, that's number 10.
That's 10.
10.
Yeah,
Damn
10. 11 is sought through prayer and meditation to improve the conscious contact.
So wait, which one is
the number 10, the ongoing inventory, and being able to fix shit as it comes up. Because I spent almost over 20 years causing a tidal wave of bullshit that I had to swim through, right?
Yep.
So if I can stop that tidal wave when it's just breaking the surface, right? So continuing to take that personal inventory, and when I fuck up, saying I fucked up. That would be, you know what, that would answer the first question as well. Which one's
That's
my
your
favorite? Is that one.
It's a great answer. It's a fabulous answer.
You just stroked Eric's ego because we have a sibling rivalry. I say it's 3, he says it's 10, and I'm fucking right. So thanks.
Oh no.
Yeah,
And to answer the second question, the third step has given me the most.
Oh, splendid. Perfectly. Turning his will over to podcast recovery. Oh, man. Well, Yeah, I think we are about, dude, they're like, literally we could go on for quite a while because there's actually a number of fucking questions, but we're running out of time, and we want to thank you for coming on, and now is your chance to really say your short message to anybody out there who's struggling, is looking for that help, looking for that shot of hope. What do you have for them?
I got a couple things. It starts right now. If not now, then fucking when? And nobody's gonna do it for you except for you, and you got to do it for you, right? If I do what I've always done, I'm gonna get what I've always got, right? If I want something new, I got to do something new. Do you know what I mean? I can't
Yep.
catch recovery through osmosis,
Yep.
right? Like work has to be fucking done, and there's freedom on the other side. Right, like there's every week in North America, the same number of people die from overdose as who died in 9/11. Every fucking week.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Like, man, I've put more people in the ground in the last 2 years than I have in my entire life.
Yeah.
Right. So one of my favorite quotes. I got a lot of favorite quotes, but one of them: the best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is right fucking now.
Yeah.
So if you want something new, do something new. Find the support; it's out there. And if nobody's told you that they love you yet today, I'll be the first.
Oh man, I love you too, man.
It's awesome. And do you have a podcast, right? And do you want to?
I do. Yeah.
Do you want to do a plug?
Little pet project. Oh fuck yeah! I'll plug it. It's called the Discomfort Zone, where the magic
Love
happens
it.
on every platform. We got a Facebook page, the Discomfort Zone PC, Instagram, the Discomfort Zone PC. I talk about some really interesting topics for a man to be talking about, right? Like I live in an oil town, and for a man to like start talking about his feelings and inner child work and all that kind of shit is like, it's different. You know what I mean? But this masculinity needs
it's like
to change, and
Yeah. It's like
So,
speaking
yeah, that's-
Chinese in Canada.
oh yeah, it's crazy. Well, I mean, anyways, that's another conversation. That one. The Discomfort Zone. It's on everywhere that you get podcasts from. If you like it, subscribe. If you don't like it, don't subscribe. I don't really give a shit. I'm in it for the process. If you listen, awesome. If not, awesome, because I enjoy talking about it. So
That's awesome, man.
All right. Well, we would like to thank our guest Steven for joining us today. Claptrack Eric. Worst claptrack on earth.
I got you back.
See?
Nice. Yeah. This is that's an international claptrack. That's amazing. I'm so happy right now. All right. All right.
That's awesome. That's wicked, guys. I had a lot of fun. And if you ever want to chat again, fucking hit me up. Let's do it.
Oh, dude,
course.
we're gonna have you back. You're gonna be our staple Canadian. Real quick question.
Yeah.
Eric can hate me. What's the deal with Canadian bacon?
We don't call it Canadian bacon.
I'm aware of that. So what did we make? Did the United States just fabricate Canadian bacon and just foist it onto you?
No. You guys slice fucking ham and call it Canadian. Like what the? We eat regular fucking bacon. All right. There's we don't. If we slice ham, it's called sliced ham. We eat just normal fucking strips of bacon on the sizzler, get them greasy. No, I don't understand this Canadian bacon bullshit. It's a conundrum, even for us up here.
Right. So we just completely
change the
foisted it
shape
on
and
you.
somebody
We just
will buy
wanted to make a shitty additive to a breakfast sandwich, and we're like, oh, we'll call it Canadian bacon.
Oh yeah. That's right. We sent you Bieber, so I guess it's even.
All right, we'll call it even. All right, let me do our sign off here. Here at Podcast Recovery, we are aiming to expand the scope of support.
Are you there? You're getting clippy, I think.
Here at Podcast Recovery, we're aiming to expand the scope of support for recovering addicts.
Hello.
Accessibility and convenience of helpful services is paramount to combating addiction. We work to bring the message of recovery to every addict, wherever and whenever it is needed. We believe that a powerful voice of recovery should be obtainable, practical, and at the touch of a button. Every addict deserves to hear a message of hope, and Podcast Recovery is here to provide it. So, all our listeners out there, follow us on Twitter. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. Follow us on Facebook. Soon we'll be getting an Instagram and a YouTube channel. Follow our guest north of the border. And yeah, everybody out there, thank you for listening. We love you. Stay safe, stay clean.